Magick.
Oh, all right. Okay. Hi there, this is Mona Magic, and welcome to the show tonight. I've got a very special guest with me, and my guest is Vayu Tiger. Tonight we'll be talking with Vayu Tiger about his book Consilium XVIII, Ritual Music, and a CD. And you see him right there. I'd like to introduce you, but go ahead. He can introduce himself. Hello, Vayu. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, and thank you for the introduction. It was very lovely. Actually, I have written two books, and I came out with a Consilium 18. It was quite the honor. There's a lot of big things going on with that, and I'm currently working on other projects as well, as you may know how that goes.
Yes.
But working on another book now, and really just going back doing my tarot, and I'm really enjoying it. So here I am.
Let's just go back a little bit because many people do know you. I know that you've got quite a bit of a following, but for those people who don't know you, explain to everyone. Just give everyone a preview as to where you've come from and really from there to here. As a matter of fact.
Okay, okay, I won't take up most of the show for that, but to start it out, I was raised in Indiana most of my life. I joined the military when I was 18, and then during that period, after I came back from the military, right after I got back, I was pretty much on a soul-searching journey, and that's when I found the Book of Law, roughly, and then I saw Crowley's writings on the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. I worked to pursue that. Then once I pursued that, it happened on January 11th of 2011 that right around 7 in the morning that I actually had that experience. It was very lovely, and it was funny that it all happened on the same day. Then my friend who had cancer during that time said, "You are going to be a professional reader. You're going to be helping out a lot of people." I, I thought he said that because he was just dying of cancer and he wasn't really sincere about it. But it turned out, not too long after he died, that it was true. It all came true. I found a job that I enjoyed. I didn't have to work the 9 to 5 hours. Then I had a lot more spare time to work on my books. I had a lot more spare time to work with other occultists on several other projects. So that's what brings me to where I am now.
I see. Okay. That is quite a bit of a, let's say, a time warp because you're talking about, going through the Book of Law to, have the epiphany of going through a friend that I assume that you lost. Is that true? Is it true that the...
Yes. Yes, his name was Angelus Enochian, and he actually died of cancer. He was a doctor, a medical doctor during the time. He was a chess champion, and he really inspired me. So, so a lot of my works I dedicate to him
I see.
because if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would be where I'm at. And another person I think I should give credit to is Mickey. It was it was this girl. She was completely brain dead, and she was paralyzed from the waist down. She had to be fed through a tube, and but she still smiled every day. And her story really, really inspired me to smile, even with the hard times. She was going to the hospital every other week or so. Her mother had to spend time with her, and she still smiled. And I don't think if it was for her, I would have found my higher self. She taught me the meaning of what it's like to find the higher self, and that's what helped me out the most.
I see. Wow, that's um, beyond touching because those things like that just last for a lifetime. Um, well, coming with your book, Consilium XVIII. First of all, explain the title because the title itself is very strong. Is a very strong title. Why 18? And the name itself.
The concilium just means consultation. I saw other occultists such as Crowley and everybody using liber, while liber is I believe was overused and it became nothing more than a magical fad. And being the artist that I am, I thought I want to do something a little bit different. I don't want to be compared to a Crowley, or I don't want to be compared to a Peter J. Carroll. I want to do something on my own, something that matches me per se. And I don't like to have a dogmatic point of view. And I think Liber was very dogmatic, saying this is how it is. I would rather prefer consultation, or picking and choosing what works. So every single writing I do, especially based on my magical system, is a Consilium, not a Liber. And 18 comes from the Roman numeral 18, and I got really heavy into Latin. And 18 in Hebrew represents Chai. Chai represents life. And also in Concilium 18, I went by the houses. Generally, the fifth house has the characters of Leo. The sixth house has the characters of Libra, and Virgo, excuse me. And seventh house has qualities of Libra. So I added 5, 6, and 7 together, and I got 18. And then, the formulas in the book in there, and the motto is to will, which was Phoebus Apollo. That's correspondent to Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to love, which is correspondent to Virgo, which is the house of Virgo, which is Aphrodite. And then you have to wisdom, which is Pallas Athena. So it all adds up to its own motto. It all has its own numerology. And ironically enough, the 18th card of the tarot, not the key, but the card, is the moon card. And 18 also represents the moon. If we go through the kamyas of ceremonial magic, the kamya or the kamya, as some people would say, of the moon is 369. And if you add 369 together, it comes up to 18. And Yesod is also 9. 1 plus 8 is 9, and Yesod is ruled by the moon. And the moon is very introspective, and it's very deep. So that's how I got 18.
Well, that's very curious. You should basically equate the moon and with nine, because when you're dealing with, let's just say, typical, or let's say mundane, or let's just say simple numerology, you would say 18 would be 9. So I was just really curious as to why you came up with 18 rather than 9. Can you explain that?
I think Pythagorean numerology is fairly new. I prefer gematria,
Mm.
especially being a ceremonial magician. And actually, the Pythagorean method is extremely new. It's not actually formulated by Pythagoras. Pythagoras had 10. 10 represented perfection. And later on, the person who invented the Pythagorean numerology, and I think, is completely flawed. I think it's really good for practical uses, but I think it's very flawed. The same thing with the Chaldean method. The Chaldean method, I believe, is very flawed as well.
Mm.
So there's a lot of semantics involved, a lot of research involved. So I just chose to stick with gematria and older forms of numerology.
I see. So the basis of your system is based on which, let's just say, I don't want to call it philosophy, but which system? Or is it a collective of
It's based
systems?
on several systems.
Okay.
That's a very good question. The philosophy of this book, and yes, it is a philosophy, and the occult has always been a mixture of a philosophy and a way of life, and even a form of mysticism. Just all kind of tied up into one. Cornelius Agrippa, in the 3 books of occult philosophy, outlines this, and this philosophy is to live as you will. It has a mixture of a little bit of Thelion in there. It has a mixture of basic philosophy. It has a mixture of getting what you want done,
Mm-hmm.
per se. So with everything that happens and everything that makes this special is because it focuses on yourself, but not such a greedy way. And it's not like other forms of left-handed paths that are so focused on the self, that it comes off as selfishness. But I didn't want something too white light or something too left-handed. I tried to keep my system especially right in a neutral area. So it's been very interesting.
I see. How long did it take you to actually, let's just say, because there's a path to writing. There's a path to writing, and there's a path to a system. Um, Many times they don't really collate with the same in time. So, how did you come about doing this simultaneously to a production of the actual book and a finalization, or let's just say progression of your system?
That's a very interesting question. Actually, one of the things that I saw was specifically it happened in 2010. I did Magic and things beforehand, but I was using other systems.
Hmm.
So I guess some of it is a compilation of other things. But my system in general came up when I actually started the writing of my book, and at first it was just scribbles. I actually put it under my papers for a while. I kind of blew it off. I've always loved writing, and I finally got to the point to where I was working with this system, and I realized I had some gold here. I had trouble translating it all. I gave some of it to my friend Jennifer. She went through it. She even had trouble doing it. So I did a finalized copy of it. And I said, "Oh man, I don't want to get this out here right now because I think it maybe I don't want people to confuse it for a cult, or I don't want people to confuse it for anything super religious."
Hmm.
And so I really held back on it. But right after I found my holy guardian angel, I felt the urge. He's saying, put it out there. It doesn't matter. Just put it out there. Specify it's a philosophy and things like that. And I'm like, I'm not sure, but I did it anyway. And that was the first publication of my book. And then I started experimenting with it right after the right after it came out. And it was during this period that I started writing my own system. I started uh, testing a little more on planetary magic, working with the zodiac, little things like that. I even wrote several invocations just using the zodiac from the book I wrote, and it came out great. I like how it came out. It came out really good.
So you actually came out with it simultaneously as to the system. So whatever, I mean, your personal relationship with your guardian angel and what you've actually published, is that a continuous relationship that you're actually building? Because I'm assuming that this knowledge passed on, or this knowledge communicated, is something that's actually going to expand to even more than what you've actually published.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. The Once you reach the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, or once you reach a certain level in general in life, it's like getting a position at work. When you get promoted to a brand new position at work, you have to try to hold on to that position, and it takes a lot of hard work to keep it. So just as easily as you connect to your higher self, you can lose it just as easily. So, you have to do little things. Uh, I always try to watch my ethics. I always try to listen. Every once in a while, I'll light a candle. Every once in a while, I'll do different things
Mm-hmm.
to keep that spark going. It's a lot like a romance. When romances get dull, you have to do little things to keep those going. So there's always new information coming up. There's always new things. There's always learning curve every day.
Sure.
So I
Sure.
take these small learning curves, and it's called living life. It's like what you go through, you experience, you harness, you reflect on it, you see how it affects you, and that's another way that your holy guardian angel speaks with you.
Okay.
So,
Let me ask you a question, because there's lots of people out there, well, let's just say you've got Crowley, for instance, okay? You mentioned Crowley in the very beginning. And then you also, too, that was your reference point, the Book of the Law, which I think that every occultist has. If every occultist doesn't have it, I wonder why they wouldn't, because it's one of those things, those books that you would have or probably have gotten rid of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you've gotten to that point. Um, there's so many books out there. There are so many authors out there. What would attract someone, and at what point would a person be in their, let's just say, journey, their path, to actually want to pick up the information that you have received from the, let's say, spirits that be around you?
Very good question. Um, I consider everything I do a mixture of everything. I dive in everything. I dive very deep into everything. So one of the primary cues that I work with is knowledge all the time. One of my favorite authors is Stephen Guth.
Mm-hmm.
The Book of Abramelin.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fully translated version of this Book of Abramelin. Then there's Jason Newcomb Augustus. He actually wrote the 21st Century Mage. I have several reference points after Crowley at this. I could go on forever. Israel, Rigardi.
Yeah.
And I like the Talmud. I even like religious texts to an extent. I'm not religious, but I just like reading them. Funny as it may sound, I think that the archaic English is probably a little bit off in the Book of Mormon, but it's a fun read.
Yeah.
And I take little things and I draw from everything. I like Francis Melville and his book on secrets to high magic, and I like how he talks about alchemy. I get to do alchemy with basic things, and it's amazing. I really enjoy it. There's several reference points, and you'll catch those when you go through my writings, especially in my selected works. And when you go through my selected works, you will see that there's so much information in there. I even read it and my head tends to explode. There's a difference of when I talk and when I write. When I write, more information just starts to flow out. More references, they just start to flow out. Versus when I actually speak.
I see.
So
I have a question for
that's
you
how that goes.
because I was just thinking, as I'm going down the corridor of any type of bookstore, or whatever, online or whatever the case may be, at what point would I be to be intrigued to feel that, okay, fine, this is information that I need. Is there a particular passageway or a script that you've actually given that you feel that could actually help people, or that you would feel that signifies what you represent? Because they have if that Wilt, Carly had his infamous ones, but honestly, the more I think about it, it was just basically reparaphrased another way. So what would be your signature as to what shows really the meat of your writing and your book?
Okay. Depends on the book. When it comes to Consilium XVIII, I guess I let out my spirituality all the way out there.
Okay.
Uh, yes, I put it all the way out there. I guess that's why I was hesitant on putting it out there in the first place. But in my selected works, that's when I really dive into my earlier studies. That's when I really dive into the information. And it's more of an academic writing than anything. I think magic has a very deep history, and I believe, and just knowing the history of magic is very important. There's a lot of pagans and Wiccans that don't realize that magic is a very monotheistic word from the Zoroastrians, you know. Yeah, and the people who practiced Zoroastrianism were maguses. But later on, that eventually turned into magicians. The Greeks, they tried to put a metaphysical twist on their enemies, saying magic was bad and all that hoopla.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of carried that stigma later because of how they felt about that religion. But in general, I think magic has a very deep history. I try to go back before modern times. I try to do collective practices with lunar holidays, solar holidays. I think there's a plethora of information that can be used.
Hmm.
I mean, there's not just the Wiccan 8 holidays or the Celtic holidays that Wiccans use. There's so much more out there. One of the most misunderstood holidays, I think, are possibly the Jewish holidays, and they're probably hard to understand if you're not Jewish. You
Hmm.
know, luckily there's a Jewish group that I do work with,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
their holidays are beautiful. My favorite part of it, although it's not a holiday, is the counting of the Omer,
Hmm.
and and I have these ties to these different kind of um, groups and different religions and everything, different spiritualists, and I see what I can get from them. I see what I can learn from them. Then I do further research and I see what goes on. So with that being said, I believe that I'm known for my plethora of information,
I
you know,
see.
comparing apples to oranges
Hmm.
sometimes, and hopefully that's what I go down for
Are you are
eventually.
you are you thinking that you'll go more so into the Judaic type of let's say deeper arts such as the Kabbalic arts and things like that, or are you also too will you be venturing into more of the Eastern type of arts itself?
I've actually considered both of them. I'd all started um, with 2 books that I purchased on all of them. I think that they're very different. I really don't like the labels used in a lot of Western mysticism. A lot of times we're a very label oriented community, and it seems like the problems that we go through, especially in this community, we're so judgmental because of our labels. But the Eastern philosophy and diminishing the labels and things like that, Buddhism, and I think some of the earliest parts of philosophy may have even came out of Hinduism. They
Mm,
have a great philosophy. It is the oldest lasting religion, so I don't have any doubts.
mm,
And there's a lot of psychologists that are Buddhists, and there's even the Japanese culture and a
yes.
lot of Oriental cultures. I like their emphasis on patience versus a lot of Western culture, how it uses magic for the now. I want to get this now a lot of times.
Sure.
There's a big
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
difference in philosophy,
Yeah.
and I believe that there's a time and a place for each philosophy. So I dive a little bit into both.
Well, I have a quick question to ask you about that because you mentioned the now and the Eastern philosophy and the Eastern way of living is something I'm very familiar with. But I was just wondering because we're all in the internet, how has it worked for you for the now and really adjusting to really balancing on a tightrope as to how you excuse me, how you balance now as to the way you actually conduct your spirituality. Because, now
Oh,
means a click, now means, get it now. You've got to cater, as an occultist, has to do different things these days. Occultist has to forget about going to Egypt as Crowley did. Forget about having some type of astral projection, or doing anything like Edward Casey. I don't even think Edward Casey even had a passport. I'm not even sure if he did, but forget about doing anything. Just sit back, get on the internet, and go as you will. How are you actually balancing that to actually balance the real, because you mentioned in your book the difference that it would make in your life. So are you talking
mhm.
psychologically, spiritually, or actually combining them all into a physicality type of thing of stepping on that plane and doing something, or are you talking about let's say a type of psychoanalysis type of trip, or therapy trip that someone can go through and venture into the Neverland. However, of course, as you know, it's all about the mind. So
Mhm.
let you give it a go at that.
Okay. Um, so the first thing I would like to mention here is I believe that the source of information, especially with the internet, you're right, it has changed the landscape of occultism. My God, I ran into 16-year-olds now. they're so intelligent. They talk about Eliphas Levi. I can't believe the 16-year-olds know who Eliphas Levi is now. And I think it's starting to cause another occult renaissance. Slowly but surely, you're starting to see more orders come around, especially more online orders. The esoteric order of the Golden Dawn that I saw. And I think it has changed the landscape. I guess I'm a little more of a traditionalist when it comes to all of that. Here recently, for example, I've just gotten rid of my Facebook because although it was good for purpose, a lot of different purposes, the Facebook. Although I enjoy it, for example, there's so many opinions. I believe this. 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 And nowadays, there's a something going on in Magic to where there are some people who are neglecting, book work. They're neglecting the hard work that goes into occultism. A person could wake up and just believe in the flying spaghetti monster and write a grimoire on it, which is fine. But I take the John D approach. I like the educational aspects of it. I like to look at the history. But as for magic on mannerisms and behavior and psychology, yeah, it's all in there. Spirituality, it's all in there. I have a fine line of a mixture. I have my own personal beliefs that I outline, I guess, in my personal life that I don't feel the need to promulgate to everyone else. But what I do like to put out there is my works about analyzing yourself, seeing what you've learned about this, what you've learned about that, and acquiring my certification in hypnotherapy is definitely gave me another perspective, and it is about the mind. You're absolutely correct. So, with everything that goes on, I think that there are some things that can traumatize us. I think there are some things that can inspire us, and sometimes they can lead to obsession, and depending on what it is, everything is so effective with all the message units that we receive. And it's a matter of how we interpret that and how far it takes us, and little things like that. So I believe it's a little bit of both. I just believe that, that, for example, talking about spirits, I believe that there are spirits. I think that there's some spirits that aren't from the mind.
Of course.
I've witnessed several haunted houses. I believe that there is an astral plane, little things like that. But I don't let it consume me though. I think I've read so many sad cases where people let their spiritualism consume them, or I've read so many cases where people let their knowledge consume them, or psychology consume them with everything. I try to look for that fine balance.
I see. Okay, so you're saying that if okay, someone goes and they would like to pretty much learn from you, and they would like to change their lives. Um, what are some of the things that people should actually look forward to? Because people these days want to have an ABC. You've got do this for dummies. You've got how to do this. You've got okay, fine. Got the grimoire of this. You've got the ABC spells of this and the books of shadows of this. Um, if I was, as I mentioned before, what can someone actually expect? Because really, these days people aren't really wanting to do things the old-fashioned way. I mean, when I was coming up, you pretty much, a book was the last thing you did. A book was the last thing you read. It was about, a way of life that you had to apply yourself. A book was the last thing you did. And, heaven forbid, even associate that with internet or even a phone you had to visit someone. But these days, people just want to go ahead and read a book. They want to say, okay, fine, what am I going to get from this? So, what would you say the level of a person would be from, occult-wise or spiritually? What level would you say would be intermediate, pretty much? Because you would have to know a little bit of information about, a lot of the history of what you've actually written. I would say it wouldn't be pretty much for the actual beginner, because you would actually have to have a backup, unless, of course, you're thinking of doing a prequel to what you've actually done.
hmm That's a good question. One of the things I'd like to mention is the occult is a part of hard work, and I've always taken the stance that there should be a lot of hard work and a lot of hard study involved in the occult. And I say this because people think that just because information is accessible, information, if I may say, is treated like trash. It's just there and it's gone. It's just another piece of information. But you're going to find a lot of secret orders. They're secret. We're in a very liberal time. But there was a time, for example, the Freemasons were secret, and everything they did was because they had to work hard for their degrees, and they had to work hard. And because there was a discipline behind it. That's why there's a secret, is because it's a personal journey. And really, I think what I would like to see a lot more in the occult now is more commitment. From people is, I understand if you're new and you're looking to find your path. I believe hard work and commitment and learning disciplines is the best way to get through this. I mean, anyone can pick up an old-fashioned book, for example. We can read the Bhagavad Gita and be like, wow, that's a good read, next book. But the thing is, you have to ask yourself, what did this book mean to that culture? What are the disciplines out of this book? What are different things I like and I don't like involved with this? So, I don't know why, but there should just be some rational thinkers involved, especially in the occult. We have to remember the earliest occultists were mathematicians. There were doctors, chemists, alchemists. The foundations of the occult actually form somewhere around Europe, although some would tend to disagree. The occult as we know it now formed in Europe, though. And, Dr. John Dee, he was probably the most renowned scientist of his time when spirituality and science had no boundaries. Isaac Newton was even an alchemist, and that's where it has its roots. So as far as that's the concern, like I said, hard work, commitment, and really focusing on the self journey and focusing on the discipline.
Okay, well then, lastly, since you did mention Dave and you mentioned, the origins, let's go back to the guardian angel that, or let's just say, I like to call, because I don't refer to angels as anything other than entities because it's a matter of a
Mm-hmm.
human classification. So let's talk about the entity that you've received the information from, and how you've actually deciphered that. Have you associated this information with any type of current information that you've been able to read, or has this been something that you've had to really reinterpret on your own?
I think it's a little bit of both. To understand this concept, we have to go back all the way back to Plato. Plato was one of the first to write about the guardian angel. But later on, during Neoplatonism, when his concepts were being spread again, and I think the history is very well outlined in the Book of Abramelin. That was
Mm-hmm.
especially in Egypt when there was a mix of Gnosticism, Christians, Judaism, and just different sects together. The Holy Guardian Angel eventually evolved from just a spirit that God sent us all the way to this ultimate entity that was sent to us eventually over time. And then the concept changed, right around the 1900s to the higher self. So the definition of the Holy Guardian Angel has changed in itself to completely understand this. And with the Holy Guardian Angel, one of the things that I always um, look for, especially in a description, is energy. I mean, I know it's probably politically incorrect to use the word energy because it's a
Understand.
measurable force or a force that has effect, but I see it as an energy, and you're right. Like I said, when I think of the Holy Guardian Angel, I don't think of a messenger of God. I don't think about any of that. I believe that we all have our own being, though, just like Plato mentions, just like several other people mention, and of course, I think that it does process through the mind. With the way that the mind works, I believe that spirituality and even the spirit is linked in the mind together because it gives that perception that we're looking at. So I think it's that key factor, like a doorway to this entire thing. And once we open up our doorway to the Holy Guardian Angel, once we actually take the time to listen and things like that, I believe that, we can walk our own path freely and we can learn a lot from it.
I see. So
So,
you had no issues or no problems or no let's just say questions about the interpretation that was given to you in order to actually write and go through what you've done. And with that aside, because I know I usually ask about two questions sometimes. What have you seen as a change for the information that you've received and this interchange with the communication that you've received through the entity that you've actually worked with? Have you seen a change in your life? You mentioned something earlier in the show about a 9 to 5 to more freedom, and also to just having a whole, a change of life. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
yes, I would love to. First of all, after I found my Holy Guardian Angel, I wouldn't even be here speaking with you right now. I wouldn't have been able to write my books or make my CD at all. And I think that I was actually a firecracker back then. Now that I look back, I'm not gonna lie, I had a pretty big mouth back then. But conventional wisdom during that period has taught me to, speak when I have to. And I felt like I've become a little more wise from the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. I felt like I've really mellowed out a lot. I used to be ambitious to the point of traveling, things like that. But now I'm more of a homebody. I became more interested in Taoism and different things like that. I'm much more calm. I'm much more at ease. I know how to do things by myself. I don't need a boss above me anymore. And if I didn't listen to my holy guardian angel, I don't think I would be here right now.
I see. So
So I've
you're
become a
actually
much
saying
better
that
person.
you're offering a passageway, or let's just say a sort of like a phone number. Well, I don't know. I don't want to put it that easy, but probably a way for people to find, let's just say, their purpose, so they can concentrate on their spirituality, so they can actually focus and refocus and reposition themselves.
Yes, that's right. So they can be much happier in their lives. So that at the end of the day, they could be much, much more satisfied with their works. That way they can lay their head down. They can know that everything's going to be taken care of. Of course, there's hard work involved. It never comes easy. But at the end of the day, you feel like you've earned it. There's much more satisfaction. You have more time for your loved ones around you. And you also have more time for more projects that you want to work on. And you can actually be yourself and reach those dreams that you want to work on.
Okay. Well, then finally, I'd like to ask you about, in reference to your book, how long did it take you, by the way?
Okay, let's start with the selected works of Robert Powell. The selected works, it took me close to 3 years to write. It's a small book, but them are old blogs that I put together during this period. I was looking back one day and I thought, wow, I really need to condense my blogs down. I started having people actually physically take my blogs word for word and start posting them. And I thought, wow, I need to do something about this. So instead of a blog, it just hit me, maybe I can just put this all into a book, and I didn't try to put out anything in there as a PDF because PDFs, they can be taken and they can be turned into plagiarism and all of that. I'm a very strong believer that plagiarism is pretty much a plague, guys. You see it all over Facebook and everywhere
Yeah.
else. So I've really backed off from the scene. So I decided just to write my book, keep it into physical paperback or hardback format, because that way it also stands as a more reliable academic piece, I believe. And then you have several different things involved in there too, um, especially with the Consilium XVIII. I wrote the Consilium XVIII in 4 days, 4 days in November of 2010.
Wow.
So that's ironic. It came out to 54 pages after it was done and typed. It was weird when I was writing it. My hand just got into a trance, and my eyes just began to shut, and these scribbles just started to happen. And I'll never forget, during that last chapter, there was like nothing outside. There was thunder outside. There was a, yeah, I heard this. Sorry for that. Heard it. I get excited when I talk about it. But it was a clear day outside, a very clear day. The sun was shining. Then I heard this thunder, boom, you know, and then something came to my mind, and about thunder, and I wrote that down. And it was a clear day. My friend looked at me. He saw me spacing out. He says, "Dude, did you hear that thunder?" And then I woke up. I'm like, "I did hear that thunder." And you're going to see a reference to that into the Consilium XVIII. But that was quite a journey to write, especially since my teacher. There was one day where he was talking about nine, and it was weird. I wanted to ask him about 18 and 9, and during that period before I was actually starting to work on the numerology. And it was weird how synchronicity worked together. So, yeah, that's what I got. It
Okay.
didn't take that long.
I'm not going to ask you for the name because I feel that that's your personal relationship with the entity that you've worked with. But with that, as it is, do you have another book in mind going forward with the communication that you've established with the entity that you've actually worked with, or let's just say the spirit that you've actually worked with?
Yes, I do actually. I'm going to be starting up a grimoire called the Libra de Magica at
And you're gonna go back with Libra,
Imperium
you're not gonna go
Pilates.
with Consorium. You're not gonna you're going to change it then, huh? You're not gonna do another
Yeah,
number. Yeah, okay. All right, so you're gonna do that,
yeah.
and how long
This
will?
is more of a grimoire.
Okay,
I
all
just
right.
wanted more of a grimoire feel to it.
I see. Okay,
So
all right.
I just use Liber just for the grimoire. And actually, with the chapters, it's not going to be like chapter one. I'm going to put the Latin terminology up there, like caput, you know.
Mhm.
So it's going to be formatted like a classical grimoire. Classical grimoires used to be formatted, into several books,
Right.
in one big book, and that's the approach that I want to go to. I think that approach was much simpler. I think it kept the information dissected to a specific goal, and it's a lot easier, especially with the introductory notes. There's roughly going to be around 3 or 4 introductory notes. And yes, I'm working on this grimoire, and it is going to have Hebrew, it's going to have Latin in it. I'm going to have the Anabe Choach in it, and I'm going to have several Latin prayers, especially ones with Jupiter, things like that. As again, this is not to be taken as a religion, but to be taken as a philosophical book to see where it goes. I believe that the universe is out there, and whether you want to call it God, Tao, Chaos, Ein Sof, Yod Vahi, whatever. I believe that the divine has many different faces, and people interpret those faces very differently. But like I said, this is a philosophical book, and I encourage people not to take it literally.
What would you like
So
to
I
have
want
people
to
know you
think for
as?
themselves.
Let's just say, given about a good 35 years, and they read the next book. They read all three books, and I see at least 4 or 5 books. Ultimately very good ones. So, what would you like to have people know you as a remembrance? Because you've got people to the point where is that digitally speaking, they'll says, well, you know what. He had some damn good books, and you know what? This is what inspired me. What would you like people to say about you?
Just really that I contributed back to the occult. Magic in general has saved my life in general. I was in an abusive household, and I started doing magic in my youth, probably preteens roughly. And my stepfather, didn't find out till a few years later. So it wasn't until that point that he thought I was cursing him, and I really wasn't. One minute he went to this abusive asshole, next to being an, how can I put it, being very liberal just overnight. So magic, in a way, I believe, saved me from a lot of bruises and a lot of scars in my life, too. So I want to contribute back to the occult, like it's helped me out. I want to give back to the people who support me, and I'm not doing it out of ego. I'm doing this because I genuinely care about people, and I want to have the best information out there for people, at least to the best of my abilities. And so I guess it's a little bit more of a noble cause, but I'm glad to be put in a position just by chance to make things happen. I don't want to be sainted. I just want people to look and be like, wow, this is some good work. Let's look at these references. I want to point them in other directions too, to look at, analyze, see what they like, dislike, and I want to help people on their personal paths.
Sure.
And that I just want to be a lamppost.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.